Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1063, 1063, March the 4th, 2020, Thursday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, so let's go ahead and cover the Super Tuesday, do the wrap up of that, and then we have some other things to talk about. But the first thing, I think, in regards to Super Tuesday, I guess the big question is, what did we learn from Super Tuesday? I think we learned quite a few things. The first thing I learned about Super Tuesday was looking at the one thing I was very interested in was how many people voted, both on the Republican and Democrat side. Of course, Trump's running unopposed, so you wouldn't think that his numbers would be all that high because he's going to win anyway. But people are still coming out and voting in unbelievably large numbers for Trump, despite the fact that they really don't need to. In fact, in a lot of the states that voted on Super Tuesday, a lot of those states, Trump basically brings in more votes than all the Democrats put together. And you could see also that some of the black and Hispanic vote is not really what it should be. And that tells you that that's because they're waiting for the person they really want to vote for, which would be Trump. So you can see a couple of these things just in the numbers of who voted, how many people voted, and between blacks, Latinos, and whites. So you can see some of these turnout numbers, and I think that they point to the fact that Trump is going to do far better with blacks and Latinos than he did in 2016. And also that even though voter turnout was pretty high, and I think that had a lot to do with the fact that you had very, very fired up Bernie Sanders supporters wanting to come out and show up for Bernie. At the same time, you also had a lot of very fired up people wanting to come out and stop Bernie. So I think that there's a lot of interest in this election. I think it's going to be a big turnout election anyway, on both sides, I expect, at least ways for now. Now, once we get into the general election, I'll be interested to see what the turnout is on the Democrat side. I assume it'll be pretty high because there are still a lot of Democrats that want to try to stop Trump. But I believe that Trump's turnout is going to be much larger, and he is going to tap into the black and Hispanic votes. And I think that that's going to have a fairly major factor. We also know from the rallies that you're seeing a lot of Democrats swing over to Trump, and you're also seeing a lot of people who've never voted before showing up at Trump rallies. So I do think that we're going to see a big turnout 2020 election. And it's an election a lot of people are going to be wanting to vote in for various reasons. So I think that was the biggest thing to take away from Super Tuesday for me personally, was I was looking mostly at turnout, and I was looking at how Trump is essentially getting people out to vote, and like I said, in a lot of these states, more people came out to vote for Republican, which is Trump, than they did for all the Democrat candidates combined. So you can see this shift right now happening here in the primaries. That's why I'm paying attention to these numbers. The turnout, not just for the Democrat turnout, because that's what everybody's focused on, because it's a challenge. With Trump, there is no challenge. He's the nominee for the Republicans. But looking at the number of people who are coming out to vote for Trump, even though they don't need to, and the numbers are staggering. He's getting, like I said, in a lot of these states, more people came out to cast their vote for Trump, even though they didn't need to, than all the combined Democrat candidates together. So this tells you that the Trump supporters are eager to vote. And I think that turnout is always a big factor in the elections, but I think it's going to be a really big factor in the 2020 election. So that's the first thing that I think was most important for me personally to take away from it. And of course, what that means is that Trump is right now the most popular politician in the country. Now, he's not really a politician, but I guess he is now because he's the president. So I guess he is a politician now, but I don't think most people look at him that way. But if you want to just, in a very generic way, we have to consider him a politician. And there's no question he is the most popular politician in the country and probably in the world. The next thing I learned is that Democrat voters are basically clueless and they're very easily manipulated. And why do I say this? Well, let's think about it. Biden essentially sweeps the South, and he won some states up in the Northeast as well, which we did not expect. Now, I knew he would probably sweep the southern states because, again, Bernie did so poorly against the right Reverend Clinton in the South. We know that Bernie does not do well in the South. Now, we were told a couple days before the primaries that he might win Texas. I had my doubts about that, and of course that turned out to be the case. Now, he did pretty well in Texas, and he got a lot of delegates out of Texas. I think Biden got like 101, and Bernie got somewhere in the 80 range. So I don't think wasn't a big gap in Texas, but Biden did win it, and that's the important thing. Biden ended up winning 10 out of the 14 states, and that wasn't supposed to happen. Initially, people were thinking Biden would win maybe 6 or 7, and it would be like a split, 6 to 7, or 6 to 8, or 7 to 7, something like that. But of course, it was 3 or 4 states that fell for Biden, which no one counted on. I'll get to that in a minute. But the reason I say that Democrats, Demo-commie voters, are clueless and are easily manipulated is that just a week ago, a week before Super Tuesday, all the media outlets, the fake news media outlets, were out there. I mean, they basically had Biden dead. I mean, he was gone. Literally just 7 to 10 days before Super Tuesday, we were talking about it here on TowerGate. MSNBC, CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS, Public Radio, the whole 9 yards, they'd all basically declared Biden dead. And they were hoping to seat Bloomberg. But when they began to see these polls and showing that Bloomberg was not doing very well, and then of course after the disastrous debate he had in South Carolina, they had to immediately shift gears and go back to Biden. They had to go back to Biden. Now all of a sudden he's the hero. He's suddenly been reborn. He's suddenly he's the comeback kid, is what they're saying now. No, none of this is true. He is the same bad candidate he was 10 days ago. He's the same guy. In fact, he's probably a little worse off. He has early stage dementia, and this is fairly obvious. He obviously, I mean, and this is not just me. We've been hearing Democratic commentators, even people who are being asked who voted for Biden, admit that they can sense that he's got something going on mentally, that he's not totally 100% well, you might say. So a lot of Democrats who are out there who are saying now that Biden is the guy, just literally 7 to 10 days before Super Tuesday, they had declared him dead when they thought Bloomberg was going to be the guy. Then Bloomberg gets whacked by the fake Indian, Hiawatha, in that debate in South Carolina. Then they get the follow-up polls. They see he's doing miserably, and all of a sudden they have to go back to Biden, because the number one goal is to take out Bernie. That's all they're focused on. As I've been saying for weeks now, they know they're not going to beat Trump. They know that. They're just trying to preserve their majority in the House, and hopefully they hope that they can take over the Senate. Now that's not going to happen, but they're already have resigned the fact that they're going to lose to Trump in 2020. They're just trying to hold on to Congress and not let Bernie destroy the entire party and take down the down ballot vote along with him, and giving Republicans likely supermajority in the House, and well, not the Senate, but certainly could happen in the House. So this tells you that these Democrat voters are very easily manipulated. They watch MSNBC, they watch CNN, because really, if they weren't easily manipulated, even though many of them wouldn't want to vote for Bernie, they shouldn't have gone over right to Biden. They should have gone for Buttigieg, who's, got a lot of problems, but he's sane. Maybe they could have gone for Klobuchar. She's got a lot of problems, but she's sane. But no, they went to Biden. They went exactly where they were led to. They were led to Biden. At first they were led to Bloomberg. Biden can't do it. We have to have Bloomberg. Then they were led down the path of Bloomberg. Then when he collapses, they take him back over to Biden, and the Democrat voting base goes out there, and we saw what they did on Super Tuesday. They pretty much, I wouldn't say it was a landslide, but it was a fairly overwhelming victory for Biden, and probably a big letdown for Bernie Sanders. And of course, we know that the Democrats are dishonest. That goes without saying. They know, particularly in the media, particularly Democrats that are supporting Biden, they all know he's got a lot of problems. They know this. But again, it goes back to the fact that they could not have Sanders at the top of the ticket, and they're out there saying, we're not trying to do anything to rig the elections against Bernie. We're not doing that. And everybody knows that's a lie. They're dishonest. They are trying to take out Bernie. That's why they were able to pressure Klobuchar and Buttigieg to get out of the race, and now they've got Bloomberg. He's out of the race. He's endorsing Biden. They're all getting out of the race. They're all endorsing Biden. Now, I assume they were all offered something. They were all offered something. Now, they'll all lie because, again, they're dishonest, and they'll say, no, they weren't offered anything. They just think it's the best thing to do for the country to get out. But isn't it strange that the only person so far that hasn't got out, that really should have gotten out, well, you have Tulsi Gabbard. She's never going to get out, but she's just going to hang around just to be a pain in the ass for lack of a better reason. I don't think there's any other reason she would be in there, just to tweak the Democrats. She have no impact on any elections or anything. But I mean, you've got a situation here where they have to stop Bernie, and that's the number one thing that they have to do: stop Bernie at all cost. They'll worry about Biden later. They can deal with that some other time. Right now, they have to stop Bernie, and this is essentially what you saw. And of course, what is Warren doing by hanging around? She got beat in her own home state. Not just getting beat, but she came in third place. Third place. But she's still hanging around. At this point, she still hasn't bailed out. And that's interesting, because she is the other far-left candidate. She's taking votes from Bernie. Now, if Warren were to drop out, her votes would go likely mostly to Bernie. And if she was smart and she was calculating, she would have bowed out and said, hey, I'll go out and campaign for you, Bernie. I'll try to deliver all my supporters to you if you'll give me something like VP. And Bernie probably would have been happy to give Warren the VP. She's a woman, and that checks that box. She's a fake Indian. He can check that box. She's been afflicted and abused by every possible form of discrimination on the planet. That will play well in the campaign. She checks that box. So for a bunch of reasons, logic would tell you that Warren should drop out and back Bernie. But she's not. She's sticking in there. And what's she doing? Hurting Bernie. So whose side is she really on, and who is really paying Elizabeth Warren? And do you think this was a plan from the very beginning, to have her get in the race simply to take from Bernie? Starting to look like that. Starting to look like that. I don't know if that's the case, but you can certainly make an argument for it. So we'll see how long she sticks around, because there's no reason for Warren to be in the race. She has less than zero chance of anything. Even in a broker convention, she wouldn't have any chance. So we'll have to keep watching Warren closely, but you can bet that Bernie Sanders is pissed at her, and probably, I know his supporters have got to be pulling their hair out. They've got to be really hating on Warren. She will never ever be able to run again as a progressive and expect to get votes from the pretty progressive left, because as far as they're concerned, she's her name is mud as a progressive, because as far as the Bernie bros are concerned, and the real progressives, the true left-wing nuts, as far as they're concerned, Elizabeth Warren is damaging Bernie, and that looks like she's working for the other side. So I think that that's something to take away from Warren, because her staying in the race and not getting out and endorsing Bernie probably cost Bernie Maine, which I think is going to go to Biden, Massachusetts, which everyone thought would go to Bernie, and Minnesota, which everyone thought would go to Bernie. But those three states ended up going to Biden. Now, Minnesota is where Klobuchar is from, and she did come out and endorse Biden. But a lot of people had already voted in Minnesota in early voting. So, it's hard to say, but it looks to me like if Hiawatha would have gotten out of the race a week ago after the South Carolina debate, realizing that she had no path to victory, and she would have thrown her support behind Bernie and campaigned for him and delivered her support to him. It wasn't a lot, but it was probably enough to maybe help push him over the top, because Maine is still, I don't think, finally called. It's leaning Biden, but certainly she would have pushed him over the top in Maine. She probably would have helped him in Massachusetts, and she probably could have helped push him over the top in Minnesota. She certainly would have made those three races closer than they ended up being, because everyone expected that Biden would win the South. We know Bernie's weak there. But in these northeastern states, and northern Rust Belt states, those are supposed to be Bernie territory up there. And so there's no question that Warren is hurting Bernie, but she's not going anywhere apparently. And what conclusion do you draw from that? She can't help herself. There's nothing she can do. She's only hurting Bernie. Why? Why? She can be bought. We'll see she might have been bought by the establishment already before Bernie could get to her. Bernie's pretty tight. He probably wouldn't buy her. Probably wouldn't offer anything but maybe a VP slot if he wins. But she knows he can't win. That's another thing. Bernie also knows he can't win, by the way. I mean, Bernie's working on his retirement plan. He's done. But Elizabeth Warren would like to believe that she has a future. She no longer has a future as a progressive. She will have to, well, she's done. I mean, she can't flip and go back to being a conservative or anything, or a conservative Democrat, or what have you, which is the way that party is likely going to have to shift in the future. They're going to have to go back to being a blue dog party or something to be relevant. So we'll see what happens there. Of course, we have Mini Mike. He bailed out, and what a disaster his campaign was, and he immediately endorsed Biden. Now, in order for him to do that, he's going to have to want to get something in return. He spent a hell of a lot of money, and of course the Democrats will want him to pony up a lot more money because they're going to need him to try to buy some more of those congressional seats. If anything else, they'll want him to pour a bunch of money into congressional races to try to defeat Republicans so that they can hold on to the House and the Senate. So you can expect Bloomberg, his money will come back into play after the primaries. When we get into the general election, a lot of his money will come back into play. Whether that money is going to be backing the Right Reverend Clinton, whether that money is going to be backing congressional candidates, or all of the above, I think we can count on that to be the case. And the question is then, what does he get in return? He's going to want something. We'll find out in the future. Not that he's going to get it because they're going to lose. But anyway, they're having to offer him something. Now, as we're looking at the race now, and you look at the future coming up, the March 10th, I believe, is the next group of primary states that vote, and then 2 weeks after that, there's another group. And by that time, you're looking at well over half of the delegates will be out there. I think Biden, with the lead he's got right now, it's not a big lead, but when you look at the states coming up, he's now got the momentum. I think it's looking more and more like Biden is probably going to go into the convention, and probably and pretty close to a dead heat with Bernie. Before Super Tuesday, it looked like Bernie, because everyone was projecting he'd win Texas, Maine, Massachusetts, and Minnesota, but he ended up losing, Texas. Again, he got quite a few delegates there, but he didn't win. It hurt him on momentum, and it tells you something about how he might do in the rest of the South and southwestern states. Probably not as good as we thought. So I think that the momentum now is with Biden, and it no longer looks like, as me and many other people believed, that Bernie would be the delegate leader coming into the convention. Now, I didn't think he would have a huge lead, and I don't think anyone would have had enough delegates to close the deal, but I thought he would be ahead. Now it's looking like that's not going to be the case. It's looking like, to me, that Biden is likely going to probably have a slight delegate lead over Bernie coming into the convention. I don't think it'll be a big lead. He still won't have the delegates. Clinton didn't have the delegates against Bernie either, and she had to rely on superdelegates. And I think that now there'll be a lot of things going on at the convention. People can change their vote and things like that. They will try to do that on the first ballot. They'll try to get people to change their vote. I don't think, though, that they can get enough of the Bernie delegates to change their votes. So I think, and plus they're kind of pledged. It gets into some tricky business, but there'll be a lot of deals being cut. A lot of people will be bought off, and various things like that. There'll be a lot of horse trading going on. They'll try to close the deal. They don't want to have to win with the superdelegates, but that's what they were forced to do with the Rotten Reverend, and I think that that's what they'll end up doing this time. They're going to be in the same boat, but this time it will actually be worse, because they'll have a candidate who, even though the Rotten Reverend had issues, medical issues, Biden's are really, really obvious, even to Democrats, and it's going to be hard for them to deny it, because he is just going to look so bad. And then, of course, if he ends up being the nominee, he'll just get slaughtered in the debates. That will not even, and that's what they have to fear the most, is that you can't put this guy out in front of millions and millions and millions of people one-on-one with Trump, with his current mental state. It's not going to work. So I guess my thoughts are that the Democrats' #1 priority was stop Bernie, stop Bernie. And if we have to roll back with Uncle Joe, let's do it. Let's just get through this first crisis, which is stopping Bernie. So I think they've done a pretty good job of that. I think they're going to deprive Bernie of the majority of delegates before the convention. Will make it much easier to cheat them. Now, they're still going to have hell to pay from the Bernie bros who are going to swear they were cheated. They're going to raise hell. There's going to be a lot of problems. It's going to be up in Wisconsin, where there's a very, very large number of hardcore Bernie bro people. They're going to be right in the heart of Bernieville at the convention. That's where they're going to be. So it's going to be, it's Bernie country up there where that convention's going to be. First thing they should do is move the convention. They should move the convention as far south as they can, because they're up in Bernie country right now, and that is not going to bode well. But I think that their first priority was stop Bernie. And so they're going to have to roll with Biden throughout the next 3 or 4 months until the primaries are over and there's no more delegates, no more races. And then sometime, I think, between the end of the primaries and the convention, sometime in that period there and the weeks before, when they have to take a close examination of Biden, they're going to realize, okay, now we have to deal with the second problem. We dealt with the Bernie problem. We're going to be able to stop him at the convention. But now what do we do about the Biden problem, which is the fact that he's essentially got dementia, and it's fairly obvious to everyone. Then they're going to have to deal with the Biden problem. And I think that that's where a write-in person comes, and they can take Biden out, and they can get Biden to take himself out, basically, and probably just admit that he's, not feeling well. He's having some issues, and the doctors advised him this and that. And so for medical reasons, he'll take one for the party, at which point they have to put someone else up for nomination. I doubt they're going to go back into the field of loser candidates, and they're certainly not going to go to Bernie. And I think that's when they're going to roll out the rotten Reverend Clinton with Bloomberg's money backing her. And then, of course, he'll have some sort of a deal with the rotten Reverend and the DNC, that he'll have some sort of privileges, I guess, that you normally don't have. So I think that that's the way it looks to me. I know they had to stop Bernie, and it looks like they've done a pretty good job of that. And but I also know that they are going to have to at some point deal with the fact that their previous conclusion of a week to 10 days ago that Biden is simply not mentally fit, they know that, and they know they're going to have to revisit that. But they had to solve the first crisis first, and that was stop Bernie. The next crisis they have to solve is what to do about Uncle Joe, because he is clearly not well. So that will probably be the next thing that they have to deal with here in a couple of months. And we'll see that coming, because they'll start dropping, news stories and stuff, about, Biden didn't look very good and he made this gaffe and that gaffe. You won't hear anything about gaffes from the media for the next two months or so while the primaries are finishing out. But once that's over, then they'll be looking for a way to get Biden to exit stage left so that they can bring in someone who they believe can keep the down ballot from being destroyed, and someone who won't get on stage with Trump and completely have a mental blackout and look completely incompetent. And that's what will happen to Biden. He will not. He will at some point, if not multiple times during one or all the debates, just literally go into psychobabble, and that's crushing, and they know it. So anyway, we'll have to keep watching for those. But that's my general takeaway from the things about Super Tuesday. I also noticed something else. Is that you notice whenever Biden has been at these victory parties that he's been doing, when he won South Carolina, he was out in California, he was in Oklahoma. So he's doing these post-victory rallies in some of these states where he won, and you notice someone's missing. Someone's missing, and that someone is Hunter Biden. No Hunter Biden anywhere. No Hunter Biden anywhere around at the victory celebrations for Burisma Joe. Why do you think that is? I mean, he's out in California, as I understand. He was out in California. Why didn't he come and join Daddy-O on stage? I think we all know why. Well, we had Justice Roberts delivering the smackdown on Chuck the Cuck Schumer for saying, quote, now he's right across from the Supreme Court outside giving this lecture or speech or what have you, Chuck the Cuck, and he says, quote, now this is all in response to a ruling that came down from the Supreme Court. It was a 5-4 decision, and it has to do with a abortion case, I think, in Louisiana, one of the southern states. And it's a ruling that will be a federal ruling that will affect, it's a ruling that could significantly affect doctors' abilities to perform abortions. And it gets kind of complicated. They have to have an office within, like, I don't know, 15 or 20 miles of where they perform the abortion and things and such like that. So it's kind of a weird deal. But the most important thing about it is that it would have a significant effect on doctors' abilities to perform abortions. And this is kind of what this ruling was about. And it went, of course, against abortion proponents. And that would be Chuck the Cuck Schumer. So he's all pissed off, along with a lot of other Democrats. And he goes out and he gives this speech across from the Supreme Court where he says, I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with with these awful decisions. So I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions. Sounds pretty threatening. And that's generally not something you hear. Well, from Chuck the Cuck it is. It's not the first time he's done this. And that triggered a response by Justice Roberts, who basically said that threatening statements of this sort from the highest levels of government are not only inappropriate, they are dangerous. So there you go, Justice Roberts calling out Chuck the Cuck. And if Trump gets reelected, I'm sure he'll be replacing Ginsburg, and I think probably even Breyer is not looking very good. If you ask me, Breyer's not looking all that good. And he's a lefty. And, of course, I think that Thomas may bail before Trump leaves office so that, just like Kennedy did, so that Trump can appoint someone to replace him before the next election. So it's possible Trump could appoint 2 to 3 Supreme Court justices, and we could end up with like a 6-3 court, a 7-2 court, something like that. So this is what's really driving the Democrats nuts in a lot of ways. It's the courts, it's the federal judges and the Supreme Court justices, which are probably, because Trump will be long gone, and these judges and justices that Trump is appointing are very conservative and very young. And that's what's driving the Democrats really nuts, because this is how they get most of what they want done, is through the courts. And that's where Trump is really hurting them, and they know it. So that's very interesting to note, and we'll just keep watching. But it kind of reminds me of the comment that Chuck the Cuck made on with Chuck Todd when he said, the intelligence community has 7 ways from Sunday to get back at you. This is the same type of comment. And we will have to see what comes out of that. But obviously, I expect there may be some calls for a censure vote against Schumer, or certainly going to hear a lot of, pushback against it tomorrow and the day after, I'm sure, all throughout the weekend. Because, pretty inappropriate comments by Chuck the Cuck, but he's known for this sort of thing, so that doesn't surprise me. He normally gets a free pass. And he will from the left-wing media. Now, if that was a Republican, you could bet that would be 24-hour front-page news on New York Times, Washington Post, and 24-hour round-the-clock on CNN and MSNBC about how a Republican is threatening Supreme Court justices. That's how the game goes. We had Trump sending out a very cool tweet trolling Sessions. As you know, Jeff Sessions was in a 3-way race. It looks like no one captured a majority, so it will now go to a runoff. And, of course, the person who won first place was Tommy Tuberville. Of course, Tuberville won first, and Sanders came in second. So now there will be a runoff election between those two. So it will be between Tuberville and Sessions. And they're very close. It's a couple point spread. But I think that Trump's tweet was significant, dogging Sessions. And essentially, wasn't necessarily the endorsement of Tuberville, although Trump campaigned down in Louisiana, and he had Tuberville appear at his rally, not Sessions. And so clearly Trump is pushing for Tuberville and not Jeff Sessions. So we'll have to see how that turns out. But yeah, I certainly do not want Sessions back. I've seen enough of him. He should just go away. I'd much rather have Tommy Tuberville, even though he probably doesn't know as much about the law and the Senate and all those sorts of things. I can never forgive Sessions for being such a slimy, weak character who allowed the coup to go forward. I'll just never be able to swallow that one. I'll never get over that. And so yes, I would support Tuberville in a big way over Sessions, and I think the president's going to make that pretty clear that that's what his wish is, and hopefully the voters in Louisiana look at that, and we get Tuberville, and we don't have to endure Sessions coming back into the Congress. He's been around too long and needs to go anyway. He's part of the swamp. Don't need him. Don't need him. Ron Johnson, on the Department of Homeland Security Committee, head of it, says that he is stepping up the probe into Hunter and Joe Biden's activities in Ukraine with Burisma. He said that in about 2 months he will release an interim report. He also said that he will be calling in to testify Andrei Telesenko. And we heard this, of course, yesterday. I'm very much looking forward to that. I have no confidence whatsoever in Lindsey Graham, although he is holding these depositions. I know appears now that there's been 2 days of depositions. Don't know who's been interviewed by name, but Graham says he's going to do the depositions, get all the information, then he's going to hold open hearings. Whether I'll be interested to see how Lindsey spins this. I don't have much confidence in him, but I do have some confidence in Ron Johnson. I think he's a pretty straight shooter. And this is going to be very interesting timing, because if he puts out his interim report, likely is going to be along with a criminal referral for the Bidens and possibly others. That's going to be about the time that we're ending the primaries. By that time, that'll be about, practically all of the delegates will be assigned in 2 months. It'll be just about over. And that would be really bad timing for Biden to at that point be the delegate leader, having a slight or decent lead over Bernie in delegate count, and then have this Burisma stuff come back and revisit. Not only that, we have the Ukraine, who announced just about a week ago that they reopened their investigation into Biden and Burisma, and that is probably going to come to a head before the general election is complete. So Biden's got this Ukraine trouble still brewing, both here in the Congress and over in Ukraine. Those things are going to rear their ugly heads, and again, that on top of the dementia problem for Burisma Joe makes me think that this game is not up yet. It's not like, okay, we got through this, we're going to be able to put Bernie down. He's not going to come with a majority. Biden will have us like majority in delegates, and then we can close the deal with the superdelegates if we have to. They'll run that route, and that's it. I don't think that's it. I think it's two things. They know they have to get rid of Bernie, which I think that they are doing a pretty good job. I think they'll get that done. But they still will have the Biden problem that they know they have. The Biden problem didn't go away. They still have it. It's just that they first things first. But with his mental issues, obviously got dementia, and along with the Ukraine stuff, that's probably going to be percolating around the time of the convention. I think that that's when they'll make their move, and will likely be someone probably even, certainly more corrupt than even Biden. And she'll also be in the middle of investigations as well, because at about the same time, she's going to be forced to give a deposition in front of Judicial Watch unless her lawyers can find a way to finagle that. And we're continuing to watch that as well. We also are hearing that there was a very heated meeting in the president's office over the renewal of the FISA, and several members, Jordan and Meadows and Ratcliffe and Lindsey Graham and Bill Barr, were all in that meeting. And apparently Trump's conclusion was he is not going to sign on to a reauthorization of FISA without some real reforms. So it looks like he's slamming the door on that. We have Chink Olgar of the Young Turks having a major meltdown over Bernie getting his ass kicked on Super Tuesday. He says that they are now going to be an absolute dig-in warfare against the establishment. We've heard that before. He says Biden is not going to beat Trump, that Biden is a liar, that he is senile, and he simply can't beat Trump. But he also says that Bernie is going to win. You just watch and see. I don't think so.